Hello. All right, it's fantastic. And welcome to another episode of the Friday Games Review. I, as always, am Dan Galvin, and with me we have Daniel Pham.
Hey guys, how you doing?
And today we're going to be looking at Asian RPG. These are both Japanese and Korean RPGs, which have become very, very popular in Google Play. And here on the producer cam, we have Ian D. Lewis, who is going to be not only chiming in with important and incisive comments, but also pouring the beers for us today.
Absolutely. So, let me go ahead and take care of my most important duty right now. Today,
right.
We are pouring something that I think our resident foreigner should probably name for us.
We're talking about Reito here, who
Right.
we haven't actually seen yet. Let's make that clear for our audience.
Very good. Okay. Actually brewed right here in the Valley, San Jose, California, actually. Home of me and also hobos who get hacked to heart with samurai swords. That was our big news story of the week.
It's good how we keep this show topical.
Yeah. Anyway,
That's right.
Oh, right, and the Sharks, sure.
Which actually, it can be very dangerous. I was wearing this hat near the San Jose Sharks.
All right, and we'll...
By the way, a big shout out to Scout, who is an APMer, who loaned me this hat for the show. We were trying to figure out what would be the proper show to wear a giant red squid hat for, and somehow... Hey, wow, that's nice. Somehow, this this one won the straw. So today we're going to. It is a good hat.
I love it.
Good. Yeah. Oh yes, please. Here we get the compostable glasses for me rather than the fabulous Oktoberfest glass. That is a fantastic Google Oktoberfest glass. People should see this. Yeah. There we are.
Yep.
So it's great to have Daniel aboard here, and
great to be here.
Thank you, and we've had a lot of fun playing the games this week. One thing about these Asian RPGs in general is it takes a long time to actually get into the game, and
I mean, in just the 40 hours I've had to play, I really couldn't get a really in-depth look at any one title. I think it requires hundreds and hundreds of hours to get a grade.
Absolutely. The best part, Final Fantasy III actually, which is one of the ones we're looking today, shipped on Google Play, and there were a bunch of reviews that said the game was only a couple of hours long. And that is because a couple of people only played through the intro. And after the intro, it actually plays the credits, and then it goes on to play the other 30 hours of gameplay or so. So these are really deep, intensive games. Another thing that's interesting about all of these games, I'm really going to be looking at 4 today. All 4 of these games are originally ports from other platforms. So a lot of the experience on Android is colored by how deep the port operation actually got. And so Final Fantasy III, I believe, came over from the DS, the rest of them from the PlayStation Portable. And it's possible Xenonia 4, I don't know if it actually appeared on anything else. So that one, it's just the style, certainly, of that game. And we also have really 3 distinct styles of gameplay here. We have Final Fantasy III, which is a turn-based fighting game, but without significant, or deep tactics. We have Spectral Souls, which is a deeply tactical turn-based fighting game. And then we have arcade-style role-playing games, which are Inotia 3 and Xenonia 4. So we really do have quite a variety of gameplay all under the general umbrella of Asian RPGs. And there's a lot of things that are very specific to this style of gameplay. Deep story is what drives the game. There are certainly RPG elements, and they vary depending on the game. We also have different monetization strategies across these 4 games. So we can talk a little bit about what the impact of the specific porting that was done, as well as a little bit of the gameplay and style itself. So let's start off with the game we played the most, which would be Final Fantasy III. I think both Daniel and I are old Square fans.
Yeah, definitely.
And why don't I'll bring this up, and I'd like Daniel to chime in on this one.
Sure.
So what's interesting about this game is they actually are supporting 2 different modes of saved game within the game. You can actually quick save, and you can also, which uses kind of a save state, and you can do that anywhere within the game. But it also supports what was traditionally in the game with save slots. So you can see we've got continue, new game, and load game. Continue just goes into the last quick save. One thing to note in this game: if you don't actually save slots, you actually, when you die, you die. So it is actually important to use the old school saved game system.
Definitely. I made that mistake the first time playing through this game, and it was a little bit annoying, but...
it's a little bit of a shock to a modern game. We're not used to a game where we actually are killed off after 10 hours of gameplay and suddenly have to start over.
Yeah.
And
instantly reminded of Battletoads. That's a game for another day.
Exactly. So another thing you'll notice is that we're looking here at the typical screen, and although we're slightly covering the only controls that are there, you'll see there aren't actually a significant number of controls on the screen. The controls are actually activated when we touch the screen. And very much this style of gameplay. Now this again is a remake of the original Final Fantasy III, which showed up on the 8-bit Nintendo Entertainment System, or Famicom. And in fact, I don't think it ever shipped in the United States, other than through some very creative people who produced English translations of this. And it wasn't really until we got into the later Final Fantasy games that we actually started numbering them appropriately in the US. I could be wrong, but that's my recollection here. So the game itself is pretty straightforward. We're inside of a town right now. We can exit the town, and in Final Fantasy true epicness, we actually have a flying machine that we can use to fly around the world map. This, by the way, is the intro part of the game. Just to let you know, this is the first section of the game where we actually have to free this town where everyone has been turned into ghosts from the clutches of this djinn. And we have to get some mithril rings and all sorts of fun stuff like that. And really, they've done a marvelous job with this remake from the DS.
I'm sorry. Did you say clutches of gin?
Of a yes, of a DJINN. Okay.
Oh, suddenly I lost interest.
Okay, so we lost our viewers right there. They thought we were talking about alcohol for a moment there. So there's beautiful little in-game cutscenes, and it's interesting. They've actually chosen, you may not be able to tell this from looking at the graphics that run through the game, but they've actually chosen to keep the game unfiltered. For the most part, so you'll see that the graphics look instead of looking blurry, they look intentionally blocky.
Yeah,
and
that was really nice, a nice touch by them. And back to the cutscenes, I was really impressed by that. I didn't expect something like that to come out of an Android game, but maybe I've just had poor experiences playing Android games in general.
Exactly. We need to get you playing more Android games. Is clearly. But yeah, they've done. It's really beautifully done. They've also done a very good job of integrating most of the Android features. Probably the only really confusing thing is again the old school elements of the game, which you definitely have to get used to if you haven't played this sort of game in a while.
For some of our younger viewers, they may not be familiar with the style of that this game is shown in.
Absolutely, and. So talk about the things that were done. They're done well. One of the things I really enjoy is that even though the game has old school unfiltered graphics, if you look at the font, you can see the font is rendered at full resolution, independently of the game, and that makes the game feel so much better because your eyes aren't trying to focus on a font that's blurry or filtered, and it's also not trying to, you're not looking at something that's really, really low resolution. And it really fits in quite well with the game, even with the old school graphics. You can see that both on the font there in the text as well as on the map and menu icons, which we're sort of covering up with our current view here in the corner. So there are some things that are sort of interesting about this. One is that we hit the back key, we get close application. Okay. Mm-hmm. First of all, it's a little jarring because we actually end up getting a dialogue that is a system dialogue rather than our own. It's also a dialogue that's not a honeycomb not a hollow style dialogue. So So we're kind of thrown out of there. You can see we actually have at the bottom of the screen a vestigial menu key that doesn't do anything. You can see I touch it, it doesn't do anything. And we also have the zoom button over here, which allows us to stretch or zoom in to make it as if we were playing this on an old school device. So all of this could easily be corrected, of course, by simply targeting a more recent version in terms of the menu and the zoom. And as far as the back key is concerned, in this case, it really just makes sense to go back to the main menu since you can continue. This would be a perfect opportunity to quick save, go back to the main menu. It'd be much less jarring for the user. Now there is, if you quick save within the game, you'll note it's a little confusing too. You click the quick save button, you say yes, perform quick save, and it does immediately then kick you out of the game and take you back to the title screen. And quick save is really what it does when you exit the game in the middle of playing it. So by doing that, you go back. This is what the default behavior should be. It probably should pop up something, let you know that you're quick saving, and then take you back to the title screen if you hit the back key.
Yeah, there should be a little bit more warning.
Yeah, I mean, again, quick saving because it's such a simple thing to quick save. In this case for the end user, and it's very easy, it's very straightforward, and you just hit continue. It can be done with really minimal kind of prompting. So there's a lot of work that goes in here to prompt the user to try to help the user out. The reality is mostly what they want to do is just immediately quick save when they hit that back key, similar to what happens if you hit the home key and then the game is closed. It actually will quick save for you if you're in the middle of gameplay. So that's something I would definitely look at in terms of being able to just interact that much more smoothly with Android. Another thing is I'll go here back to so I've now exited. I'm going back to the main screen here, which is once again, as a general rule, you want to be able to continue past all of these things here at the beginning. It's just you hit the back key here, close application. It's not really necessary if you're on the title screen. So this is just something I would definitely like to see them clean up. Again, I think everything else that we get here is in this game is really just it's vestigial from its original origins. You have a limited number of save slots. You have, and the game really is about knowing when to save, making sure you have saved at appropriate times, and it's very traditional. Your object is not to complete the story, but it's also to avoid death, because death is very painful in this game and can cause you hours and hours of having to redo things. And the interesting thing is you can quick save at any time, but quick saves don't really help you out other than to save your progress, because you can only have one slot and the game deletes the quick save slot when you die.
Yes.
So again, it's very much about juggling those internal slots. I think it's a little bit confusing to a user of the game that you have to juggle these kind of two independent mechanisms.
Yeah, 100% agree.
But it is really good that they have that, and it definitely makes it kind of a mobile and complete title. The other game that I think is really interesting that's closest to the same genre is Spectral Souls, and Spectral Souls is an epic and huge game. Thank you for changing the yes.
Yeah. I also have to mention that the developers of Spectral Souls are probably my favorite developers ever. So, hey, Carlo, and that other dude that I can't remember who's buddies with Carlo. You gave us the most epic night of drinking at the Marriott Sky Bar ever.
Who is us, by the way? I was not there.
Neither was I. I wasn't there either.
Yeah.
Well, so it's true that Dan Pham was not there. Dan Galpin left early before we found
the epicness happened. Exactly.
Android in the corner that was 6 feet tall, and the CEO of Spry Fox put it on and went dancing around the bar. That was a good night. Yeah,
that was a little bit of an edited version from what I heard earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. That was good. That was good editing for our family viewers. So Spectral Souls. Let's get back to the game. But the good thing is that we've had a long relationship with these developers. They've done a really good job of taking a really epic game from the the PlayStation Portable and bringing it here. But you do see a lot of vestiges of what they had to do. One of them is if you look at the on-screen controls here, you see that you have a constant on-screen HUD of arrow keys, and the arrow keys are actually fairly far apart here on this tablet. If you look here on what is I believe are you left-hand side of the screen? I guess we're seeing a mirror here. So and so you'll see they're actually fairly far apart, and you'd actually want those to be closer together on a tablet of this screen size. But on a phone, they're about the right size and orientation. The rest of the buttons are actually pretty good on the tablet, although you do have to reach fairly far if you're actually trying to control it with two hands to get to the start button there in the center. And then you have buttons that are anonymously labeled A, B, C, and D with no indication of what their function might be. B normally goes back.
That's part of the mystery, Dan.
It is part of the mystery and so part of your job in this, and I think if you're the kind of gamer who enjoys this kind of game, is to try to puzzle out how the user interface works as you're playing the game. Also, the game is very, very deep. If you're used to Final Fantasy levels of combat, this is much more like Final Fantasy Tactics, where there really is a lot of tactical element to the combat itself. The goal is to chain attacks in order to inflict maximum damage, and also the terrain is very, very important. There actually are hills in the terrain and elevation, and you actually have to move strategically to sometimes cut off other characters, sometimes to surround them properly so you can chain attacks appropriately. So there is really a lot of strategy in this game. We're very, very early in this game, in this scene here. Some little notes. Again, coming back to its PlayStation Portable origins, we do see this incredibly low-res font here that they've chosen to. You also notice they've chosen to filter all of their graphics. The HUD is in very high res. It's very, very nice, by the way. All the elements they've added are definitely there. But in terms of it is a little bit jarring to have that in there. In terms of it would be great if they could figure out a way of actually modifying the engine to support some higher res text, or perhaps just not filtering the text. In this particular case, I think the filtering is actually diminishing from the impact of the text within the game. And really the only other comments I have are comments about about the HUD and just making the game a little bit cleaner in terms of being able to have people understand the controls. Once you realize that you're playing a game that includes a set of random buttons, and you have to kind of figure out what they do in different situations, and the game is consistent with how they're used, because of course it was consistent on the original game. I think you do figure that out. You can see like all of the screens they have in the game are all very, very simple, nondescript. But again, a nice use. You're actually seeing this is a dialogue. Hitting the back key again doesn't do anything. It should. So these are just little, when you're porting these games, it's always tricky to figure out what to do in each one of these situations. If we were going to look at this today, and in terms of featuring, they would definitely say, hey, that back key should then pop them back out of that pause screen, or move them back to the main screen of the game rather than stopping them there. But in general, it's for what it is, it's a very good game. Also, note that this game has an enormous secondary download. And this game was one of the first enormous games to ship.
Yeah, so if you're downloading this game, plan to go get a cup of coffee, take a bathroom break, watch a TV show, something along those lines before you can actually play it.
Yeah, well, as I recall, you guys, can't you play Pong while you're downloading this?
Yes, absolutely. One of the cool things the developers have done is you actually.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome.
They implemented Pong. Now, unfortunately, it's as far as I can tell, it's impossible to win their game of Pong, but you can play it during the download, and that brought back some great memories as well. So yeah, and it's very cool. It actually gives you progress. I think it does win for the coolest downloader on Android.
Yeah, by far.
All right, I just also want to point out, you guys, that we have just regained the amount of viewers that we lost while I was telling my Carlo Picranti getting drunk in the Marriott story. So I just thought I'd break in to see if my face on the TV is actually going to lose us 4 or 5 more viewers.
I think people are just interested.
Yeah,
I think people are in suspense as to whether or not this squid hat is actually going to fall off my head at some point
It's
during.
been sliding backwards a little bit.
This is a very challenging hat to wear. So
I don't think people are waiting to see whether it falls off. They're waiting to see if it starts to become self-animated.
Oh, that's possible. Yeah, it could become self-aware during the show.
I will say this. I've been watching the YouTube live stream, and actually, if you guys are watching on YouTube Live, there is a live stream comments where I'm like pathetically typing, "Hey, dude, anybody there? How about some questions and stuff like that?" I feel a little bad about myself actually, but I would say out of about 20 comments, about 12 of them are praising Dan's hat.
All right, there we are.
The squid hat is a huge winner.
All right.
On the other hand, according to our G Plus stream, the Android beanie, clear loser.
Really? People did not like the Android beanie?
No, they did not. But it's because they felt that it was a poor quality Android beanie, and you could do better, Dan.
All right, there we are.
Back to our regular schedule.
Right. Goal for next week, get an even better hat.
Actually, better beanies. Yeah. So, I don't really have that much more to say about Spectral Souls because I only played it for about 4 hours, and it really takes a long time to get farther into the game. So I can only assume the story stays engrossing and fun as it certainly was from the start. So that gets us through, I think, the two that I would describe as Japanese RPGs that are in this set, and now we also have 2 Korean RPGs as well.
Yeah, and the 2 I enjoyed a little bit more than the first 2.
So, you really? Okay.
Yeah, actually I did. I'm more of a fan of the arcade style games. I have ADHD. It's not. I don't actually have ADHD.
I feel like we should have some music here as you now tell us stories about how this has impacted your life. Sorry, go on.
Let me rephrase. I have a short attention span, and these games have managed to keep my attention a whole lot better than the first 2 have.
Yeah, and so we've got 2 examples of this genre. We have Inocia 3, and which is from Com to Us, and this game was really, I think it really set the bar high for Korean RPGs coming to Android. It was really the first one that I was excited about. And yes, later. But good that it didn't force me to join there to do that as a general rule. So we can continue the game. You can say I'm a level 4 barbarian. For anyone who's played the game knows that means I haven't played that far on this tablet. So some general notes here. And we've actually talked about Inocia in a previous episode, so I don't need to go over this in great detail. Obviously on the tablet, the HUD is huge. It's enormous and it's low res. And these, as you're controlling the character, you can see I really do have to move my finger quite a long way across the tablet in order to actually use this controller that is here on the left-hand side. Also, we're seeing, once again, evident that this game was a port is, the graphics are very, very low resolution for modern devices.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't really take away from the charm of the game very much, and I certainly would not want them to, not bring this game to Android just because of that. I think they've done a really, really nice job with the original pixel art on the game, and it's really quite charming. The basic game is controlled using essentially a single button control with a bunch of pop-up buttons that have different actions. And this is also very, very, really very straightforward, very intuitive. You can slash things with your action button, and there's also a series of action controls. The game involves a lot of repetitive actions. So ads are, as you see, placed into the game. With this is, I believe, an ad-supported game only.
Dan, if you want people to be able to see the controls, if you actually take the Galaxy Nexus out of that plastic container and put the tablet in there, then people will be able to see your hands as well.
Ah, that's a good point. All right, so I guess we can't actually...
Or actually just hold it. Well, if you use preset 1, he can actually hold it.
Dan's hat made preset 1 a little tricky.
But, we should show us preset 1. Just
you know what? Show us all the presets because they're awesome.
But the cable has come loose, so you'll want to fix that.
Yes, that's a good point.
There you go. See? How beautiful is that?
That is glorious. All right, fabulous. So you can actually see the HUD and how long the amount of distance I do actually have to move my fingers across to change the direction. So we definitely want to see the fact that this is a large screen device being taken advantage of. I'd like to see the HUD be higher resolution as well. Generally, fonts in the game, be higher resolution as well. because they do feel blurry on this device. But the controls are fun. You actually have an option of using kind of these special attacks here as we kill off deer.
I really like the control mechanism. I can button mash all day long on a game like this and get results. But you're right that the HUD size does make it a little bit difficult to smash all the buttons at the same time.
Absolutely, that's right.
Something I used to love doing in Street Fighter 2, just button mash all day.
But again, very, very, very similar in style. We go into buildings. We have this sort of different building view, which makes this building. I mean, from the outside, this building looks actually quite small. From the inside, the building is enormous, and that's also, I would say, something that is something that I didn't even notice. The fusion machine. That's cool. This is how you synthesize things. Also, notice hitting the back key here does not pull me out of what is very obviously a dialogue in the game. There's an on-screen back control. So for about 1 billion reasons, the Android market, Google Play. I'm just supposed to drink every time I say Android market. The Google Play team.
I'll drink for you.
Thank you. The Google Play team would have lots to say about this before featuring it. But it is really a very well done game in the genre. But another thing the game does do is that one of the first quests in the game, and there are lots of quests, that's how the game is broken up, is to actually send you back to Google Play to rate the game. And if you rate the game, if you actually go and take that quest, it pops up Google Play, and then it gives you some special potions. And as we probably mentioned before, that is actually against the policy of Google Play.
It made me a little bit sad.
It did. At least they're not asking you for a 5-star rating, but they are asking you to rate the game in return for giving you something within the game. As a general rule, we love games that encourage people to review. Just try not to incentivize them, other than saying, yes, if you liked our game, review us.
And if I am going to review a game, I want a little bit better of an incentive than just some potions. Maybe like a cool sword or something.
Someone can contact Daniel offline for incentives for rating incentives.
Yeah, please. Send me a message online. Like, make sure it's at least a sword or some cool armor or something. Custom graphics.
Again, I'm gonna pull it off of here because it's too hard to keep HDMI actually going. So we're not going to be able to use that camera anymore. But the game really is deep. It has quite a lot going for it. So the final game that we're actually looking at, and we're going through these pretty quickly here, is from our friends over at Gameville, and
we're going to do Xenonia. Is that correct?
This is Xenonia 4. And Return of the Legend. And I was excited about this game for a lot of reasons. One of it is that it's just beautiful pixel art.
I loved it. The art was amazing. Everything's high resolution. The controls are really easy. It's I hate to say this, but it's almost a more polished version of the COM2OS game.
Oh, yeah, it is definitely it is definitely a later game. You can see it. I've got it makes use of vibration when I'm doing this. And actually, I'm pretty far in the game here. We're already several hours in the game. I'm level 6. And again, the game is very high resolution. I would still like to see higher res fonts. They still are a bit blurry. And one of the nice things about this game is that you'll notice actually, and I should have mentioned that before when talking about in Notia 3, that you actually do see artifacts due to basically filtering. Where it's actually blurring stuff that's outside of the current texture into the game. So you see like little stray pixels here and there. You don't see any of that in this game. I mean, it looks beautiful at this resolution. So
another thing I want to note is that this game and the last game you can skip through a lot of the cutscenes. So if you're not a fan of story-driven games and you want to skip right to the action, you can definitely do that.
In other words, if you have a short attention span, these are the games for you.
That's why I love these games. That's why I love them. Get right to the action.
Exactly.
Skip all the stuff.
Now, for me, I will say that from a gameplay perspective, there was a little bit too much of I walk off the screen and I walk back on, and all the monsters are back. And I know that's a important part of the element of this sort of game, and it certainly gives you the unlimited ability to keep leveling up. But I did find it a little frustrating. Now, is there a better way to use potions, by the way, than going to your inventory here and actually clicking use potion?
I couldn't find it.
Okay, I was like, really? That's how I have to do this? But maybe if someone, there is this plus button here, but it doesn't seem to help. So. Yeah. So I was really hoping for something better within the HUD to say, hey, I really want to use a potion because I'm almost dead, and there was no way to do that.
That was one of my complaints as well. That if you're in the middle of a 5-monster fight and you want to use a potion, it's kind of annoying to have to go into the menu screen to do that. It
is jarring, and again, though, big action button. I think it's interesting to look at this and compare this against what we saw in Final Fantasy III, which had really minimal displaying controls on screen. This we have lots and lots of stuff all over the screen. They're both very effective. I think this in some ways is more intuitive, but I really like the minimalist approach. And once you've actually played the game for just a few minutes, you do figure out fairly quickly. One thing when you have this many buttons on the screen, it does, even though it is somewhat intuitive to have buttons on the screen, it's like when you have this many buttons, it just starts to get tricky what you're actually doing.
So I had a question for you, Dan. First, based on some things that we're seeing on the YouTube live stream,
yes.
How are the controls on this compared to Inosha?
I think they're a little easier. The controls are a little closer together, so I find it's a little easier on a tablet. They still have the same basic problem, though, that they aren't scaling the size of the D-pad for the tablet, which I would like to see.
So they really should be scaling that. And would you like to explain to our developers the best way to do that?
Sure. So what we're talking about here is this device is a large screen device which has a screen resolution of MDPI.
Yeah.
Sorry, a screen density of what we call MDPI, which is about 150 pixels per inch. And so what we're trying to do whenever we size one of these controls, we're actually looking to size them based approximately on the size of your finger. In this case, we're trying to look at what is a comfortable motion. Now, the good news about this particular HUD is it really is a good compromise between form and function. It works it works well enough because the controls are all placed close to the edge on both sides. So it's actually very easy to reach all of the controls within the game. And so it's a little bit better than what's going on with Inosha, which has controls that are farther out, and much better than what was going on with Spectral Souls, where you had controls just spread across the whole screen. Even though Spectral Souls had these very beautiful high-res controls, which I really liked, having them spread across the screen made things challenging. Because they put the buttons in the corners, they actually work fairly well on a tablet here, and you can actually see what. Oh, is the cable out again? No, sorry guys. It's again.
Yeah. When Reita was making that motion, it wasn't dirty. It meant put the cable back in, Dan.
Right, exactly.
So I also have one more question, and it's just based on what I'm seeing from the screenshots here. Keep in mind that I haven't actually played this game, but as far as I can tell, on the screen when you're in the action, you are apparently a fairly young child wearing a cowboy hat and carrying a gigantic gun.
Yes.
But in the cutscenes or when you're actually talking to somebody, you are apparently a cross between Billy Idol and Britney Spears. So can you explain that?
Well, so it's interesting that you mentioned that. Actually, in the game's storyline, it is actually mentioned that the character is surprised that he looks like a child, and he's actually been brought back in time. So they do actually try to justify the childlike experience. However, they are talking about the somewhat older child that appears in the cutscenes rather than the very young child. Now, this kind of squashed art style is a hallmark of both Japanese and Korean role-playing games, and so having the character run around in this sort of wide-eyed, childlike form is definitely a signature element of these games. And I think a lot of the reason is the characters are small and they wanted to differentiate them very easily. And if they actually tried to make them look more adult, there's fewer pixels to draw eyes or fewer pixels to draw facial features, and so it became easier in these games to differentiate them by having these kind of squashed, cartoony forms
large
and
heads.
Large head,
Mhm.
exactly. So that's and this has just stayed now and become part of the art form, even though we don't need it.
You know, I'm not going to argue with that, but you
Mm-hmm.
can't explain the bare midriff. You just can't.
Well, I thought it was interesting because his dad also walks around in a fairly shirtless way, and I thought it was sort of to make him be more childlike. His dad is like the 12 pack going, and he has like this I don't know.
I love how there's 1,000 other elements of this game we could be reviewing, but we're looking at the bare midriff and the shirtless dad.
Well, we are following Ian's interests here. So, in any case, so things to note in this game. One is the back key pops up and says "Quit game" and go to main menu with again a system dialog. We do once again have the vestigial menu key. We have the zoom in key. Oh, it's always fun to actually push this and see what happens. Does the game
It's
die?
a surprise every different game. Yeah.
I suspect this game is just going to be massively unhappy now that we've done this. But we'll see. It's always interesting. So this is what the game would look like if you're running it like on an ancient device. By the way, actually, let's do back. I don't want to do a new game. Let's do continue. And again, a lot of people say, well, how does pixel art scale? And we can't possibly do a game with that supports different screens on Android because pixel art doesn't scale. It just looks terrible when it has to go down to lower resolutions. Especially this style of art. This is the one people complain about the most because it's got outlines on it.
Yep.
But to be honest, this is totally playable. Like, I would not be embarrassed at all on a device with this low resolution having to actually have this style of art. So this is just a note out to you game developers. It's not nearly as bad as you think. I just died. So I'm going to quit the game now that I've died. Extreme action RPG, and that's actually the way the game monetizes. Is you can buy things that allow you to resurrect yourself. So the game is kind of focused on death, because death is how they make money, and at least one of the ways they make money within the game. There's also
Maybe that's why the potions are so hard to get to.
It's possible. That's what I was curious. I don't like to be the one who's being the one mounting conspiracy theories, but that's certainly a possibility that I considered. So yeah, from a perspective of the game, having that menu key just really doesn't help them, but it does actually allow us to talk about something which I think is kind of fun, which is exactly how a game does support multiple screen styles, multiple screen resolutions, and as you can see, it's really not that bad. Even for a game that's as high resolution as this, to actually scale down to an incredibly low resolution. When we're zooming in there, we are going down to like original G1 resolutions.
Yeah.
But if you want to avoid having that in your game, it's actually quite easy. You simply have to make sure that you have the manifest saying that you support all screens and that you're targeting a recent version of the SDK. So it's get that out of your game. Your game doesn't need it. The game looks beautiful without it, and don't give a user a reason to push that button and crash your game. It's just not worth it. And the game, by the way, doesn't have to crash. That's just the game not handling the resize message appropriately. So I wanted to take a brief mention. We did have a couple of other games that were nominated, and I know that this was a very, very narrow nomination pool here. We had Parallel Mafia, which really is not fit into Asian RPG models. It does have some artwork that's kind of, I would say, reminiscent of this, but it really falls into a totally different category of game. So sorry to say that we're not looking at it. The same thing with My Kingdom. For a princess, is that what it is? I believe called.
Yeah.
For My Kingdom for the Prince.
Yeah, My Kingdom for it's a long title.
It's a long title for the princess.
My Kingdom for the Princess 3.
Yes, and which also falls into that category. Now, I will say that I did try to look at this game. I spent a long time trying to get it to download, and you can see it. We're on the download screen now. And as you see there, it thought it downloaded part of it and then went back and it failed and it's re-downloading again. The game might be really beautiful. Certainly, this title screen is gorgeous. The developers, this is a very, very popular developer with a lot of popular titles. So I would love to have looked at it, but if a downloader does not properly resume, and this one does not seem to, at least in the 3 times that I've had it fail, it is restarted completely. That's going to keep people from playing your game, and so it's something. It's a shame to spend the thousands of hours in developing, a game title like this, only to to not have a method of getting the game to the user. Now, the other thing, of course, I would say is that because this is on Google Play, we really should be using APK expansion files to deliver the other content. That way, Google Play will automatically deliver the content to the device for you, and you don't have to worry about having this downloader. Now, if you do have content that you're trying to split across different screen resolutions, there's a limited amount of that can be done using the APK, multiple APK facility within Google Play. But in general, I think for the vast majority of these games, it's not necessary to even do that. I think that we're at a point now with modern hardware where scaling pixel art looks pretty good even.
Yep.
So just want to do a brief mention of those two and why we're not having them on the show. But it's always kind of important to me that that things get delivered in a way that's good for the user. I will say one nice thing about My Kingdom for the Princess is that it does not have the vestigial zoom control, although it does have the vestigial menu key.
I also want to say that I did get a chance to play Parallel Mafia, and it is a very entertaining game, but maybe we can cover it in a different show where we cover miscellaneous games. It's more of a mashup type of game. It's like a MMO combined with a little bit of RPG with localization, geographical and regional elements to it too. So,
when I looked at Parallel Mafia, I really felt like it was representative of what I think is kind of a new genre of games that I think we're calling location-based games. So, for instance, Red Robot Labs has a game called Life is Crime that's very similar. There's a couple other games out there that are like this, where you're basically playing on a real map. So it might be actually really cool to do a show just around location-based games. It's a pretty new genre, though. I don't know if we'll have enough titles to look at.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea, and I certainly want to see more innovation in the mobile game space. I think one of the unique things about being on these mobile platforms is that we carry them around with us, and so that does open up a whole bunch of new gaming potentials. Plus, there is a lot of opportunity for promoting local businesses within a game and monetization as well. So I think it's a really interesting category, both in terms of gameplay as well as in terms of finding new ways of monetizing games. So I think we're gonna have a short show today. I don't know if there's anything else we want to say. We do, of course, always value your input on our moderator page. So please continue to nominate games for our next few weeks. We do have a few more weeks lined up, and we'll continue to hopefully be here.
Yeah. Yes, we will definitely be here. Do we know what's on for next week? No, but okay.
Hold on.
No, we do. But that's right, folks. We are having a short show today. Our show is only going 3 minutes over time. And before we leave, yes, we do have a show next week. We do have a topic for it. It escapes me at the moment what it is.
I do know the week after next week we're going to be targeting NFL apps.
That's right.
Games,
the week after next, it's all about football. And not Rayto's kind of football.
No.
Our kind of football.
So next
real kind of football.
Next week we have is Brain and Puzzle.
Right.
Right. Soccer.
And before we leave, let's
next
just
week is
let's
Brain and Puzzle games, by the way.
Brain and Puzzle. Yeah, actually, Brain and Puzzle games. We had this request from a viewer that wanted to nominate their Brain and Puzzle game. I think that it's a great genre, and I'm really, really excited to take a look at that. I will be back here next week. I sat out this show doing the producer thing because I am, if nothing, not an Asian RPG fan. But before...
So are you saying that the Daniel fan was our Asian correspondent?
Yeah, he's our token Asian. That's
Thanks,
right.
Guys.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Too bad we didn't have any V, P, I, or M RPGs. It just... What kind of Asian are you again, Dan? I can't remember.
You guys guess. You guys can guess.
All right, anyway.
Moderator page, you guys can vote.
That's right. What kind of Asian do you think, Daniel?
Yes, what kind of Asian do you think I am? Yes.
And also, I just want to make sure that everybody holds up their beer before we leave. Yeah. How much is Dan drunk? How much is Dan drunk?
No, not very much.
Hard to tell in this, but I think I've got about a quarter bottle left, so I'm not doing
done.
too well.
Wow, yeah.
Dan,
nice.
Yeah.
Well, we're both Dans. You see, that's what works out. I think
He's not broken until he loses the deposit on his apartment.
So
You guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks a lot for being on the live stream. By the way, I do have to mention, so there's some great comments right at the end of the live stream. First, I think Dan Galpin should be drinking more beer. That's a great, I love that comment. The other ones are, it would be great to review something like the old school Elite. Oh my God! I have to tell you, that is so true. Elite was my favorite game ever.
Did you leave that comment, Ian? That sounds like a comment.
No,
that's someone else
Dennis
left that comment.
I think Ian created a new account and signed in as himself just to post that comment.
You know what?
Exactly.
If I was going to create an account, it would not be named Dennis P. Boost. No, no offense to the Dennis P. Boostes of this world, but that just wouldn't be my first choice.
There you go.
I would probably go for, I don't know,
Dennis Q.
Old school Elite.
All right.
probably.
So, yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, Elite and Rogue actually were the two suggestions. I think those are both great suggestions.
Yeah, Rogue. It's interesting because Rogue. I think that almost all of these RPGs that we looked at today actually are descendants of Rogue to some degree or another. Actually, if you play Dungeon Hunter 3 from Gameloft, it pretty much is Rogue with updated graphics and a couple of additional elements. But yeah, I think that there's certainly I want to see more games that are like Elite. I'd like to see the original Elite come back in some super awesome form.
Yes, I want to see the original Elite come back as a mobile title.
Yeah.
And not that, okay, all props to the original Elite authors, but when you brought it to PC and called it Frontier, it was a mistake.
Yeah.
You did not do well with that.
Yeah.
There were issues there.
I was a huge fan of the Wing Commander games. I was a huge fan of,
me too.
of
I love
X-Wing
those
versus
games. Yes.
TIE Fighter.
Privateer 2, one of the best games ever made, and after that, Frontier.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I was a huge fan of Starflight as well, and then that series of games, which all owe their legacy to Elite. So it'd be great to see that. I also want to, as far as early games that I want to see, I very much want to see Archon come to Android.
Hell yes!
So it's React Games. You have the license. Bring it on. All right. And that's pretty much it, I think, for us on the Friday review of games. Again, come back, keep nominating brain and puzzle games for us to look at next week. As always, I'm Dan Galpin. With me is Daniel Pham, and of course we have Rayto, who is currently running our technical deck here, and we have Ian on producer. So thank you all.
Thank you guys. We'll see you next week.
And cheers.
Cheers.